T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Self. All right. Welcome everybody. I guess I'm live now. It's been a rough day. So let's start out this podcast. Thank you for everybody joining and everything and adding to this conversation, because today the podcast is going to be me talking about body structure and hognose snakes. We're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So the whole chat's included. First thing I'd like to talk about is USARC. Thanks for pulling that up. USARC, they fight for our rights to own the animals that we enjoy working with and that make up a big part of our lives. I think it's easily said here, you know, without reptiles and amphibians, most of us would feel pretty lost. If I didn't have hognose in my life, I might as well probably be dead. I'd be dead. And if not literally or physically, metaphorically, I'd be dead. So USARC, all the way, donate. They fight for our rights. Phil Goss, one of the top people running USARC, great guy, donates a lot of his time. You got Daniel down in Florida, a bunch of other people that I have not mentioned because drawing a little bit of a blank here. I'm probably slightly nervous because I'm live, but that's okay. And also, one thing I wanted to cover, the Reptile Talks. Got them right here. May 17th through 19th, I will be one of the speakers here. There's going to be a lot of really cool people giving talks about different reptile species. I'll be covering, of course, plains hognose / western hognose snakes. There's going to be one of the leading authorities on reptile health there, a herpetologist / veterinarian. There's going to be a lot of people talking. Also, I'm going to be releasing a new project of hognose snakes at that convention. It will be the first time them being shown in person, or sorry, really shown just like released to the public. And it's going to be a really good time. And you can get tickets. Just go to reptiletalks.com. They also are on Instagram. Rami and Jay Summers are running this. Rami has the Reptile Super Show, one of the best shows ever. I was actually going to post a video of Rami and I racing. He had one of those, what did he have? He had like that Austin Powers, like yellow cart thing. It was way faster than my go-kart because I brought a go-kart out there to drive. Some people probably know about that. But anyway, the Super Show, very good time. If it's an expo you haven't been to, it's a must go to. The Reptile Talks, there's going to be animals here for sale too. It's not just people up there talking about reptiles. There's also going to be exclusive animals for sale by the people presenting and talking. So it's going to be like this very fun reptile show / just like symposium. And it's a pretty cool hybrid. It's going to be like, you know, hybrid of a symposium and what I just talked about. Reptiles being shown and buy and sell, you know, at the show for the vendors that or the people that are speaking, and then people hanging out and talking. So come join. See Avery here, Bree's here. She goes, I'm so upset I have no vacation left at work to attend the conference. I think it's going to be a very good time. It's going to be new for me. And so thanks everybody for joining. The one thing I wanted to get into talking about was selectively line breeding and paying attention to the anatomical features of, you know, hognose snakes. This is going to apply more to hognose. This can apply to other species too. Like, you know, I'm not well versed in all species. My primary focus is, of course, western hognose snakes, for anybody that knows me. And the one thing that comes along with selectively line breeding hognose snakes is sometimes bad characteristics or features, more specifically around the facial structure of the hognose snake, such as what's called bug eyeing, large eyes, short face, you know, pretty self-explanatory what that is, and then sometimes even narrow head. So we're going to get into that. And so anybody at any time wants to add to the discussion, bring up anything to talk about, please. It'd be a lot of fun. I'm very thirsty. So this is one thing. only had like 30 seconds, and my water got moved. So I'm very thirsty, but basically the only thing I have to drink here is kefir. It's the worst choice of beverage. So yeah, pug noses. That's what Bree said. You got your tickets? Cool. So yeah, I'm glad a lot of people are coming out to the reptile talks. And let me drink this a bit, and then I'm going to start busting out some hognose snakes and pointing out features and characteristics, what should be looked out for, and everything. Yeah, so I pretty much chose fucking liquid yogurt to drink. I'm going to have somebody grab me a water. Where's your water? I don't know. It's probably over in my living space somewhere over there. Or he's going to have to get a cup with water. Okay. Probably just a cup with water. I don't know where the hell anything's at. All right, let me grab a hognose. Oh, thanks for about the hognose memes. I'll be right back. Let me grab it. I'm going to grab something. Here's one problem. I don't have a lot of hognose with bug eyes because I don't want them. Oh, you know what? I do have one that I know I don't like that much. Sure. Yeah. Thank you. All right, so right here, I have a red anaconda. This is a small adult female. And this is going to be an example of one with very good head structure here. And the one thing that you can go to look or reference for a really nice heterodon face is iNaturalist. That website's awesome, and you can look up plains hognose snakes, and you can see wild ones that are found there. Interesting, though, sometimes you can see some male hognose in the wild that kind of have, not bug eyes, but larger eyes. So let me get up close. And you can see her rostral scale is, you know, fairly pronounced. It's not real. Here's the thing, though. Sometimes people look at ones, they have like really small rostral scales, and they'll be like, well, that one's got a funny looking face. They can actually wear down their rostral scale just from overuse digging, you know, and it will grow back, but they can wear their rostral scales down to kind of like even to a nub if it's extreme. But the one thing you want to look at for their head is like, you want wide, like not a wide head, of course, but like, you know, try and get her to hold still. There we go. More of like a diamond-shaped head. You don't want the protruding eyes. Her eyes are fairly, you know, they look really good. And there's a good angle right here. Oh. Yeah, she's not a good subject. Let me grab one that I know that does have bug eyes. So it's probably better to start out with something that actually is an example of what to look out for. And I'll explain, too, how you could point out bug eyes as babies and when they're larger. Come on. There you go. I'm going to go right through here. Okay. All right, well, I got two examples here. Today I'm a bit shaky. I just drank an energy drink. I was doing taxes all weekend, or all week. It's been pretty much a horrible time. So here we go. Now look at this guy. See those big googly eyes? See how big his eyes are? Now, his head is a little more circular shaped. If you look at from above and try to get up close, you can almost see more of the rim of his eye being exposed. And then this one coming up next to him is not as bad. And the one thing you guys might notice is these are both, really nice red albinos. And this guy is one I would not really want in my breeding stock. Now, he is still here, but I am not currently using him as a breeder. Try to get some up closes of this. Now, his structure, like, as far as his, like, between his eyes and head is actually pretty bad. See, there's a pretty good angle of that. See how it's short? Now, bug eyeing can be very hard to pick out sometimes as babies. Basically, the thing to look out for is pay attention to your baby hognose. Look at multiples, and then if you ever start to see ones where, hey, these ones have way bigger eyes compared to the other ones that you have, those are likely to turn into an animal that has larger eyes and might even have some, lower quality bug eyes or more, higher expression like bug eyes, because this is going to be a polygenic trait. This is a trait where it's definitely on the spectrum. If you selectively line breed these ones, let's say if you purposely line bred these ones with bigger eyes, it is going to make more with bigger eyes and more extreme bug eyes. And so the best way to pay attention is just looking at your babies. If you have a bunch of babies, refer to babies that have just like typical good structure. And that's kind of hard to say because, like, well, how do you know it's typical good structure? Look at your like normal Western hognose babies. Look at the normal hatchlings, and then start comparing those babies to like other ones that, let's say, it's more likely to pop up in like albinos. So albinos, snows, any combination. And then this one right here, this one's structure is actually pretty decent. He does have a little bit of bigger eyes. All right, so stress behavior. Julie asked, would that be because there's stress behavior, the wearing the rostral scale down? Yeah, that's one thing. If you have hognose snake that's wearing its rostral scale down, you probably definitely, you want to change its enclosure. You want to offer more hides, maybe make the enclosure larger, try different substrates. You might want to try something more like a bioactive substrate, and then offer more hides, humid hide, if you don't already have one in there, because, that's something where the hognose is being more restless and it's digging excessively. Is it common for the bug eye feature to be seen in albinos just a result of breeding, and is it seen in other morphs as well? Yes to both. It's more it occurs more in albinos, and I'd say it really started from inbreeding albinos too much back when they popped up in the 90s, and people keeping them too closely inbred. But it's most likely there's an allele that's close to the albino mutant that gets passed along, or a series of alleles that can affect the eye structure. And the more it gets line bred, the more those negative traits that can affect eye structure might pop up. So it seems like there's some linkage between albino and the eye structure, because it's kind of hard to get rid of completely. If you breed enough albino hognose, you will pop up with some that have larger eyes. The important thing is to just be aware of it and nip it in the bud before it becomes a real big problem. So if you start getting an animal with bug eyes, or ones like this popping up, you don't want to breed these, and you pretty much want to outcross the individuals that were producing ones that have these large eye features and the short face. And you can see the distance between the eye and that rostral scale is very close. Now, the top of his head, again, the shape isn't too bad. It's a little more circular, though, because the way his, since it is a shorter face, when you look from above, his head is kind of circular from above, if you can get that. So you want more of a diamond shape. See how that angle, see how it's kind of short and rounded? So you want that nice diamond shape. You don't want the eyes to be protruding at all. And I have seen ones, too, that hatch out with larger eyes, and it actually corrects a bit as they get older. So it can definitely be tough to tell with 100% certainty from a hatchling. So the most extreme one you had was, Bree says, was a purple line normal girl, barely has a nose, completely bulbous. And that's a non-albino, but I'm sure it's probably het albino. So that's the thing. And I have been seeing bug-eye pop up more in like toffee bellies. I've seen it. I've even seen some sables with it. I've seen a few axanthics. So it's definitely an issue of selective line breeding where people aren't paying attention to these anatomical characteristics. And how it can negatively affect the physiology is if you keep selectively line breeding these ones with larger eyes, you can actually get duct problems where their duct that produces the fluid in their spectacle can be like not drain out properly. And you can get these ones that have like fluid buildup in their eyes. And those ones generally continue to have issues. That fluid needs to be expressed. And I've seen in some cases where people actually have surgery to have the one eye removed. Although I'd say that stuff, or like those, are definitely less common. Can we see a better head shape from above view again? Yeah. So let me get these guys close together. So the one dude is pretty decent. He's not really what one I'd consider bad. And actually, you get these close together. This is the bad dude, unfortunately. He's going to be a pet only. You can see he's got a shorter, puggier face. This guy's head's more diamond shaped. And you can see this guy's eyes here are larger. Quite a bit larger, and they do protrude a bit. And so there they are together. And these guys have been pretty good. They're very nice examples, and they've been good models for this. So again, like this guy right here, he's kind of the bug-eyed guy that we would not want to breed. Oh, it's just a normal. So Bree has a normal that has bug-eyeing. So that's just, yeah, again, that's a good example of how bug-eyes, it's not necessarily just tied to albinos, it's just more common in albinos. We should have the top breeders come up with a standard chart like they do with dogs. Yeah, Oscar, I was thinking about something like that. I did a live about head structure, body structure on Hognose snakes like a year and a half ago. The one thing I didn't want it to really turn into was a gatekeeping thing where people start nitpicking and going after people like, well, this one's eyes are a little larger, and making it kind of like a negative thing where people are trying to attack one another, because there are going to be some hognose that people are going to breed that have probably a little above larger eyes that come from certain projects. And that's the thing. If you worked really hard on a project, let's say like for 4, 5, 6 years, and you get an individual that you really wanted to produce, and it has a little bit of, larger eyes, I'd say go ahead and breed it, but don't breed it to anything related. Monitor it. Make sure it just doesn't like start popping up or offspring start getting worse. This stuff is on a spectrum. And even if you have, like, I've had 2 non-bug-eyed individuals bred together that produce some that I would consider bug-eyed. So it's it's impossible to get rid of. You breed enough hognose, you're going to get a degree of it. So anyway, I'm going to put these guys back, and I'll be right back. Now, here's a really good example. This guy's a super daddy sunburst. So he's sable, albino, super arctic, and super anaconda. So this is an animal that most people would, there's a degree of inbreeding, of breeding back to get this, desired morph combination. And a lot of times when you have multiple alleles stacked, multiple mutant genes stacked, more likely to get ones with more prominent bad characteristics. But this guy, I'd actually rate him as like not like a 10, but close enough to it. He's got extremely good body structure and head structure for an animal that has so many genes. Let's get him from above. Try to get that top view of his head. Because you can see his head is still pretty diamond, kind of shovel shaped. And his eyes are definitely not protruding at all. And the anatomical features of this dude is pretty similar to that of a wild Heterodon nasicis. So as far as getting an animal that has multiple mutant alleles packed in it, that's like a very good standard. And so he's one of my best breeders and favorite breeders because, you know, I've seen a lot of sunbursts that have bug eyeing, and it is kind of tough. Do I still produce them? Yeah, they pop up. What temp do you use to avoid killing the sperm eggs during breeding season / building eggs? Good question, Don. One thing is the higher temperatures speed everything up. Because, you know, these are ectothermic species, so their metabolic rate is significantly raised when they're at higher temperatures. So the one problem is you can miss your females. They're going to develop follicles way faster and ovulate way quicker at higher temps. And then also the males, yeah, there's definitely that worry that high temps can limit sperm fertility. Now, if you cooled your male for a bit, and you keep them just at moderate temperatures, I don't really think it's a big issue. I've had males with hot spots around 90 degrees, and the sperm that they produce is still very good. So I'd say it's definitely more from my experience that the high temps just speed everything up, and it makes it easier to miss your females. So, and the other thing is, too, when you raise those temperatures, too, their metabolic rate goes up. Your females are more likely to be more aggressive feeders and higher probability of them trying to eat a male. So that's another thing too. The sooner you pair out of cooling, the more likely, you know, or the less likely it is for your female to want to eat a male. So that's definitely a good benefit to pairing early out of brumation and then also cooler temps, because the higher temps speed everything up, and they also raise the animal's metabolic rate and their desire to want to eat more. So again, this guy's structure is pretty great. Try to get in there. Mike Tatula's hog that changed color. What do you think about that? That's probably a hormonal, you know, causation. If it was a hognose, I don't know which one you're referring to, but if it's an older hognose that just drastically changed color completely, that's going to be some type of hormonal, you know, trigger there. That's making it'd probably be like, yeah, it'd be accelerating a lot of pigment change. And I've seen that in Brazilian rainbow boas. You know, there's been a couple of hognose, but it's pretty rare. All right, so that's Bree. Yeah, that's what I thought you may have been talking about Bree, because I was about to mention, yeah. So that's Bree's. I'd say that's a hormonal because change. I think when that occurred with hers is around breeding season 2. How often you get locks you are playing versus how often it doesn't work with the pair you wanted? That's a good question. I'd say the one thing is when I pair, I definitely go at my breeding season with definitely not with like, I'm definitely not saying like, hey, this male absolutely has to breed this female. I definitely improvise a lot. I improvise quite a bit because like sometimes these males don't want to breed readily, or sometimes I want to breed one male to like 5 or 6 females, and that's just not possible. And then sometimes you have certain males, like I had this one male that I really wanted to breed last season, and he just wasn't interested in breeding. So I always have other plans, backup plans of what to do. But I'd say most of my breedings, well, they're not improvised. The male I may be using might be improvised on, because I might have multiples of similar genetic males. And that's what I try to do. I always have, I don't like it when I only have like one male of a particular morph combination. That I'm like, hey, this male, I really want to breed 2 or 3 females. In most cases, it's going to work out. There are those small percent cases, though, where the male is just not interested in breeding. I'd say with healthy male Western hognose snakes, about 96, 97% are going to be, good breeders. And a small percent are going to be not that into breeding. And then I found some are more receptive with certain females. Like certain males and females are more receptive with one another, and certain ones just aren't for some reason. While that might be some type of, I don't want to say locality difference because our hognose and captivity are so mixed up, most of them being Southwest Texas original locales. And then, of course, with sable stuff, we have a lot of like Montana locale crossed into our mainly West Texas locale stock. How can you tell when a female is close in ovulation? Well, it happens pretty fast with, hognose snakes. Colubrids is not like pythons. Like ball python people, they'll ultrasound a hognose snake and it'll be pretty crazy because they'll be like, oh, she's at 8 millimeters. And then a month later, she's at like 16 or 18 or 20 millimeters. And so you have like a long time to pair them. So when you breed, like especially a hognose, especially if you're keeping their temps a little warmer in the springtime, like I said, higher temps is just going to accelerate their metabolic rate, and they're going to metabolize everything quicker. Even, of course, egg follicle production and ovulation. So what I would do is actually keep my females a little cooler, and even my males. And once they're all bred, then I'll raise the temperatures a bit. Once they're bred, that's, and I only do one lock. That happened, like I came up with that hypothesis when I was like in my late 20s. I noticed a lot of times once females were bred, they weren't really receptive to being bred again. Can you get multiple locks on one female? Yeah, sometimes yes. But a lot of my females, once they're locked up, they're not as interested in letting a male breed them anymore. And a lot of times they'll even be frantic and trying to get away from them. That's one clue that your female was bred, if she was kind of receptive or okay with the male being around, and then all of a sudden she's very frantic, the next introductions. Most likely she's been bred and she doesn't need to be bred anymore. So instinctively and naturally, her body's pretty much just like telling her, like, get away from me. I don't need to be bred. She has the natural raw materials to ovulate. And the egg follicles, while I don't have an exact time frame, and this time frame is also going to vary again based on the temperature you keep them at. Somebody could do research on hognose and say, hey, from egg follicle first production or like as they started to grow to ovulation was 3 weeks. I'd imagine if that's just an example. That would be at cooler temps though. I would say from egg follicle development to ovulation for hognose is like 2 weeks or less on average. It's a very short period, short window. And so you want to have them locked before then. And the other thing is too, like I remember somebody told me they were ultrasounding hognose years ago. And I was like, that's a cool idea. I've thought about doing it, but I just don't think it's that necessary. I think it's definitely interesting, and it can definitely tell you some things about hognose snakes. I'm not saying it's like pointless. I don't think it's pointless at all. But I told this one person they're ultrasounding them. I was like, yeah, you're probably going to get different follicle sizes and everything. They're not like even. And like I've had hognose lay big slugs and small slugs. And so it's going to be hard to pinpoint these follicles and when they're actually mature. And they're going to vary. And the guy said, he goes, you know what? That's funny you say that because the one I ultrasounded, she had different size follicles. He goes, some follicles were larger and smaller. I was like, yeah, see, exactly. So I was like, you could ultrasound them, but you don't have a large time frame like a ball python. And you kind of want to breed them right at the beginning of the follicle production. And that's very quick. So unless you're ultrasounding your hognose every 2-3 days, which that's a lot. And also, I would just pair them. Just start pairing early. Just pair earlier in the year if you're afraid like of missing anything. So mouth jaw issues. Yeah, that's another thing too. Going back to the body structure of hognose snakes. See, this guy is pretty much anatomically correct. And if you start selectively line breeding them without paying attention, and you start accidentally line breeding ones with big eyes and short faces, again, the negative physiological traits that are going to come along with that. The negative aspects are going to be the very large eyes, which can sometimes have duct problems where their eyes just don't drain out properly, and they can actually get these eyes swollen where basically the fluid keeps building up and the spectacle just expands, and they have this it just looks really bad. And you're going to have to drain it out, or it's going to need surgery. Another thing is too, when they have these short pug faces, they're more likely to have issues burrowing. They're more likely to get substrate stuck in their mouths. They're more prone to infections. They're more prone to what I call dry nose. That's something that a lot of people experience during the winter months, especially with a lot of people, even like me, keeping them on coarse aspen sandy chips and being in a more northern environment. And this can even happen in southern climates too, where your air is drier and basically the scales around the rostrum become chapped. And that's why when and then they bring them out of brumation and they are stained with like COCO. That's because those scales were really dried out and then they became rehydrated by the moist substrate they were in, and they actually stained the scales too. And so it's actually a case of chapped scales. And to negate that or to fix that it's a husbandry issue. And you need higher humidity or moist substrate. You gotta remember where these guys come from, tilling around in loamy soil. That loamy soil has a lot of humidity in it. There's a lot of moisture in it. And that's going to basically moisturize the Hognose's face. Their scales are designed to actually have some degrees of moisture. A lot of people think Hognose snakes, yeah, they need it very, very dry. It's not the case. Even though they come from the plains and it can be very dry in the plains and the humidity level can be very low, the substrate they're burrowing down into has a level of moisture in it. The chapped nose is common with pug nose. Exactly. So Bree pointed it out, and it's like what I was just talking about. So when you have these anatomical features, they definitely negatively affect the physiology of the animal, such as being able to just like burrow and really the chapped scale things, and then getting substrate stuck in their nasal passage because their nasal passage structure changes and their mouth. So those are the negative effects. While they might look cute and they can make fine pets, you know, these are also worst case scenarios I'm talking about. These ones with pug noses and stuff, they just need to be monitored a little more closely. And yeah, you just don't breed them. I think that kind of covers the short face stuff. I think I took long enough to explain it out, but I think I got everything I wanted to cover. Vent issues like protruding vents. Something I've noticed a few snakes and wonder if it's a problem as it grows out. If you're seeing vent issues, I'd imagine that's due to musk gland buildup. That's probably what's happening there. And why musk builds up, I don't know, actually. Everybody has a theory on it, like dirty substrate, not enough humidity. You know, I have ones in my rack system. They all have moist, humid hides. And I have ones that have none of those issues. They don't have enlarged musk glands. And then other ones do have enlarged musk glands. And the thing to do is just to keep an eye on it. And I made a YouTube video. Some people here are probably aware of it, and how to actually, you know, fix that problem through massaging those musk glands and pushing it out. And I have a video how to do that. And if you get a really stubborn one, use hot water. Do you watch for the Hoggies to twitch every time you pair? Not exactly, Ellen. The things I look for more is like non-receptive behavior, where the females are just trying to get away from the male. You know, certain females are more relaxed. I like them when they're kind of in a relaxed state and they kind of curl up, or if the male's surfing them and the female's surfing all around and then they get kind of comfortable. I like that behavior a lot. One way to tell if a female is really receptive, the best way to tell is like when she arches her tail. If you start seeing a female slow arch her tail, that's extremely receptive. The tail wagging, that seems to just be like kind of a hormonal response and reaction to another hognose nearby. You know, I've had hognose that aren't even ready to breed that do that. It's kind of like a way probably for them to signal to one another, like, hey, I'm a hognose. And that kind of excites that behavior, because sometimes you can put them together and they're very excited. And then you notice afterwards that excitement kind of like dwindles. And so that's kind of just a natural hormonal response that's brought on when they're first introduced. It doesn't always mean that they're ready to breed, though. Tail wagging, yeah, like I said, Trinity, it can be, you know, it can be vice versa. The negative ones where I see tail wagging is when a female's really wagging her tail and then she's also flying around and trying to get away from the male. So sometimes you got almost like these mixed signals, and it's probably because, you know, as these animals evolve, it's kind of like, say, like, you know, you have hognose snakes that are defensive, very defensive, and certain ones are very placid. You can even find ones in the wild. I found some hognose in the wild that you pick them up and they're very calm and very easy to handle, and they seem like they'd make a better pet than some of the hognose I have at home. And then you got these very defensive ones. And so, you know, their bodies probably aren't perfectly always portraying what is to come afterwards. Like, hey, this female is doing this, so she's more receptive. And, you know, you're not always right. Sometimes I have these ones that are like pretty flighty, but like I said, they calm down. But if they're constantly flighty and trying to get away from the male, that's a very bad sign. And I generally pull them pretty quickly. Okay, curious to know if blood ring eggs are common. Can you explain more in detail? How about reptiles about the blood ring eggs? And yeah, Spike, inbox me a picture of what you're talking about. Okay, and thanks. Yeah, MTB says that they followed that video. I have one that was impacted and infected, and it still worked. Yeah, that's the thing. That video is for enlarged musk glands. It's not for infections. I've had 2 people show me ones that they have actual infections in their musk glands, and one was, and there was another one that was an infected hemipene. That won't exactly work. The video I have is showing how to express excess musk, not how to fix an infection. Some of those infections, they're abscessed and they need to be definitely cleaned out. A lot of times they need to be scraped out because you need to get all that infection out. They need to be ran on antibiotics, and they need to flush it with like iodine, some type of antiseptic. Some of those are going to need veterinarian visits. If it's a really superficial one, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if it's a very superficial surface one, you can make a small incision and clean it out pretty easily yourself because it's not that invasive. But I'm also not telling you to do that. What about when they whip their head around? Again, don't read too much into certain things. Just watch them as a whole overall. You know, when I pair my hognose, generally I like to pair them when I'm going to be in the room for a bit and I can monitor their behavior for the next like hour or 2. Your chances of your females eating the male are higher when you first introduce them. Not saying that they won't eat them later or try to, but it will definitely be limited. And I was going to make a video too on how to reduce your chances of your female eating your male. I've already specified some of those ways. Early pairings, cooler temps. The best one is just being there if you can. But that one is like impossible if you're breeding multiples long term. How long do hogs normally stay locked for? You know, minimally, like my lower average time is around 2 hours. I'd say my average time for hognose locks is more in the 3 to 4 hour range. I definitely have 5 and 6 hours. The longest lock I've ever witnessed is about 13 hours. I would say 2 to 4 is your most common. What was the proudest moment in your hognose breeding experience? Good one. Somebody actually just asked me that recently. I don't even know. I don't even know if I feel proud. I just I just like the hognose snakes, and you know, some of this stuff is just observing their behavior, going along with things, getting lucky, learning from mistakes, and just pushing forward. So I don't know if there's anything I'm actually proud about. You know, I like some of the hognose morphs I've made. That might count as that. I like moonbeams. That's a cool snake combination. I don't know. I'd say if there was like anything proud, maybe discovering certain things so I can help like other people point out things such as this enlarged musk gland bullshit where people are saying that they're all impacted. Generally, these aren't impacted. And somebody actually took one of their hognose. It was a really cool story because they told me they took it to the vet. And actually the vet, once the person told them about the video I made and everything, the vet was actually kind of on board because that vet actually wanted just to remove the musk glands. In a lot of cases, this isn't necessary. These veterinarians, though, they don't have a lot of experience with like plains hognose, you know, in general. So if you even find an exotic vet, they're probably not going to know much about plains, you know, hognose snakes. And that's no fault to their own. There's just so many species. You know, there's the only people that are going to be really specialized in these and know a lot is going to be the community of hognose people that exchange ideas and have been keeping them for a very long time. I've just been one of the longer people keeping them, and I started early on, just stop trying to project my feelings and ideas onto them and just listening to the hognose snakes because they will tell you most of the problems they have if you listen to it in the way where you're just really paying attention with, you know, the signals they give you. Some of it needs to be kind of interpreted. Like, again, like the large musk gland thing, why they get it, I don't know. The hognose can't tell me that. You'd have to do a larger, broad study on, like, say, keeping ones in a bioactive and a really moist substrate, brumating them often, you know, and then comparing it to other ones that are kept differently. and seeing if there's a big difference. But, you know, these will be like long studies. And a lot of people, you know, especially now, there's just a lot of opinions thrown around, and there's a lot of definitely false logics, and it gets passed on. Like, say, the one I see all the time is like, my hognose are getting sick. They're from bad feeders. And everybody wants to blame the feeder place. Most of these feeder places get their rodents from the same places because they have a hard time keeping this stuff in stock, and they buy them wholesale from, or sometimes I've even heard some of these accounts, they're actually giving it to them for free, but they have to take these rodents from labs, and they're the control group ones that aren't supposed to have anything given to them or any studies on done on them, or not studies, but any chemicals or anything like that given to those rodents. It's supposed to be just like the control groups to compare to the you know, other mice that are being studied. And anyway, so I'm going to see Trinity said something. When they whipped her head around, they were trying to get the males into their backs. She was locked the next day. So I'm reading that as a receptive. I don't think she was trying to whip her head around to push the male onto her back. They kind of just like, they do that nuzzling thing. And again, it's that pulsating rhythmic motion is just kind of signaling to one another that they're a hognose snake. And one of the most receptive things is when the females like curl up and they're kind of relaxed with the male, and the male's kind of circling them and trying to get them into position. And then the most receptive, if you're seeing it, is when the female starts arching and raising her tail, or even see them starting to open up their cloaca a bit. And one way to get your females more receptive too, if they're not being receptive with the males, like I had a sable female. My original, it was actually two of my original sable females. They just would not lock up. And I tell other people about this, and it sucks because everybody thought I was a lunatic and crazy. They're like, no, you just suck at breeding hognose. I'm like, no, I don't think that's it. They're not that hard to breed. And I'm like, I keep missing these females. They just develop egg follicles and ovulate and slug out because they're not being locked. And they're like, well, how do you know? I was like, I'm down in this reptile room, my hognose room, like 16 hours a day. And I check. I like to observe my locks. I try to observe every lock if I can. I don't observe every one. I get very close. Usually I'm observing about 90% of them. It's very important to me. It's just the way I structure my organization for my breeding plans. And it's just very effective for me. And so anyway, I knew these females weren't getting locked, and they were like, the males would be mounting them and, you know, courting them very well, but these females just would not allow these males to lock. And, you know, it was like no coincidence. I'm like, hey, these are these specific females. They're not letting these males lock, and then they're always slugging out. So some people were like, oh, you're probably pairing them too late. So I'm pairing these things like 10 days out of brumation, you know, and I even tried some earlier, and I'm using my best breeder males. Like I have my 4- and 5-year-old Arctic Conda males at that time that would breed like a stick. And these females are just like logs. Now, a couple of those females I got to finally breed. I did that by putting 4 fucking males with the female. And when I did that, then I was able to get locks and stuff. And so it was a lot more stimulation. And so that's what helped those females be more receptive. There just wasn't enough stimulation with the one male for whatever reason. And I remember I was talking to everybody, and like my dad, he used to breed like tortoises, and he bred a lot of frogs. And the one thing you do with his frogs is he would drive them around and take them like, you know, down. You drive down to lower and higher elevations, and he'd put these frogs together and play, you know, recordings of males calling, pair them, and do these calling, like these calls, these audio tape recorded calls during thunderstorms. And so I took one of those tips from him, and I drive these female hognose down through the valley, and then I put them in these like, you know, enclosures where they get more natural sunlight, and I'd have the window open by them, and then I just put a bunch of males on them, and I finally got these really non-receptive females to lock doing that. But it was like a bunch of like, I'd say it was the majority of the multiple males probably stimulating the female and getting her receptive more than anything else. But that other stuff I was doing may have helped too. I'm gonna grab another hognose because I've been holding this guy for a while. Here's a cool morph combination. And so some people have been actually talking about this, and with this morph, like leucistics having narrower heads or kind of funny faces. And I have seen bug eyeing in leucistics. So this is a super Arctic Lucy. And the funny thing is, it seems like super Arctic helps Lucy a ton. For one, I think it makes them look better. It changes their iridophore structure so they're more clear. And you get some of those calicoing, like white patches that are still remaining on their throat. And basically those are just different iridophores that are absorbing more light and making it look white. And then the other iridophores, due to the super Arctic gene, are allowing more light to pass into the scales, making them look more translucent. And so then you get like pinker cheeks because you're getting more light refraction off these changed iridophores due to the super Arctic gene. And then you're getting the solid black eyes. And the cool thing is all my super Arctic Lucies actually have very good head structure. He is kind of pancaking a bit, so he's kind of making his face look a little weird. He looks like he's like, you know, when you pet a cat real hard, when you pet a cat real hard and you're like that, he's kind of looking like that right now, but he is pancaking a bit. But you can see the structure on this dude is very good. How often do you hit the 1 in 16 odds with double head times double head? Well, if you do it enough times on it, it does. Those statistics are correct. It's going to be like 1 in 16. I did hit a 1 in 64 once, and I wasn't even really trying. I just bred triple heads together, and I thought, you know, it'd be cool to hit it, but I was like, I probably won't. But I kind of accidentally did, or unintentionally, I should say, because I wasn't expecting it. But yeah, the one thing a couple people asked me about the leucistics is like they have like narrower looking heads, and I have seen certain things like that with them. But I've also been outcrossing mine, obviously, into a lot of Arctic stuff, and so this is a super Arctic Lucy. So this one was bred back, but all my super Arctic Lucies look pretty good. I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, it isn't the best, you know, angle to see because this is the camera on an iPad, and it's also a snake moving around. So you're going to have a hard time. And then also the cool paintings in the back. You guys should know those are done by Avery. Aves of the Apes. Amazing artist and good friend. I'm kind of thinking I may have to try a different male. I put another one in and she seemed more into him. And then, so yeah, certain males too are more likely to breed. You have some of these males that are kind of like lame breeders and they're kind of tough, like, you know, to get to lock up with anything. I've had certain males though that just won't breed. Yeah, see, he keeps pancaking. You see he's kind of cobering up right there. So it's making it a bit tough to kind of get like you can see part of that calicoing on his throat. See, it varies. Some have a lot of calicoing. Some don't have a lot. He has very minimal, but you can see those two white scales. They're more of like a solid white, and you can see all the other scales are more translucent or partially like transparent there. Yeah, so Bree second that. She goes, I swapped males with one of my females and got a lock immediately. So yeah, you could swap males. Sometimes you could include a second male. A lot of times I include a second male. Sometimes I'll even do two females and like two males together too. And then once one pair locked, then I remove the other ones. Lucidum seems to have a bit of a deficiency in most species, and I actually thought this is where the bug-eye combo would be. So meteoric serpents mentioned that. Yeah, the leucistic stuff, yeah, if you see it, like it's like Texas rats, they have bug eyes. Ball pythons, the black-eyed Lucies, I know they have kind of like what they call duck billing. They have like an overbite. The leucistic hognose are pretty good, though. I think if you're doing a lot of outcrossing with them, you're not going to really see many problems. Now, with the Lucies where I do see the issues, it's always been males for me so far. I have seen some females with like bigger eyes, but yeah, the leucistic stuff, start outcrossing it. You know, you can tell when they're not outcrossed because I got my leucistic stuff, and I'll tell you, like when I got my Lucy project, a good way, not a good way to tell, but like the way I was able to tell is that these animals had very little outcrossing is just in the look of the hets. And then like anytime you made hets, like they looked like wild Colorado locale hognose. And the thing is, you can tell there's like no polygenics in there. And obviously a lot of our hognose in captivity, it's very hard to get an animal that's just very plain. They all have like certain traits in them or some polygenic characteristics or like, you know, lineages in that animal's history. And so when I have these like posset Lucy and het Lucies I'm making, and these things are like look like straight up like Colorado locale hognose snakes, you can tell these things really haven't been crossed out too much. And then also the one negative feature, we've talked about this many times, was the leucistic stuff has quite a bit of attitude sometimes, making it difficult to feed them and approach them because they're very flight and fight responsive hognose snakes. And that's just part of their genetic makeup. It's hereditary, these behavioral patterns. And so these ones, like even though this guy's pancaking a bit, the Lucy Arctics and the Super Arctic Lucies I made this year, all the Arctic Lucies and Super Arctic Lucies have very good head structure. And then also this entire clutch here I have, all good feeders. Nobody here needing live or scented. They're all eating consistently. And like there's only one in this area. You can see that one's on live, but that's not even a leucistic. This one's a drop feeder. And every other one that had some tags that may have needed at first no longer need those tags because they eat consistently. And that's a positive effect of outcrossing. So the one thing is, though, that's going to be a bit of a debate, and there is no right or wrong answer. I mean, there's definitely a wrong answer. But how often should you outcross hognose, and how often should you inbreed them? Inbreeding is definitely essential to a lot of projects, or what's considered inbreeding. But the thing is, there's negative inbreeding, and then there's, natural inbreeding. Because in the wild, hognose do inbreed to a degree. In captivity, sometimes it goes a little too far. And I think the problem is, again, it's just really paying attention to the anatomical characteristics of the snake, these structural features of them. So as long as everything's features and characteristics on that animal are really good, I'd go to like F2 before you outcross. That's completely acceptable. I'm not saying that you go ahead and just do F2 on purpose, but if you have to for a project, I think that's plenty fine. The population in Illinois, in one of these last remaining, there's a few isolated populations, but one isolated population has it's been studied for many years. I think it's been over a decade. And on the one plot, there's about 86 individuals. And there's a neighboring plot where there's probably, a good amount of hognose there too. It is a little bit of a larger habitat, but there can't probably be more than 100 there. And so they probably interchange a bit. But you're looking at under 200 hognose that are holding a population very strongly. And the characteristics of these hognose look amazing. There's no bug eyes. There's no bullshit. They actually look really, really good. They look better than, but the thing is, that's just the natural kind of, flow of some inbreeding and outcrossing happening here and there. And now that might not help. I think that helps a little bit to people understand that, if you have a good amount of diverse genetics from different people. You also have to pay attention though too, because some people will be like, hey, I bought this hognose from so and so because I wanted one unrelated from yours. And I'm like, well, that person bought all their breeding stock from me. So, all right, definitely, it's sought after now that their family tree becomes a family wreath. Such an angry pancake. Any good true hypo combos? Rarely see those. Good one, Don. The true hypo stuff. It's selectively line bred. I've talked about it before. It is labeled as recessive. You got the characteristics that make up a true hypo are the same characteristics that you see in pistachio, smoke hypo, which nobody really talks about smoke hypo, Jose Angel, who has the enigmas over in Spain. And what was the other one? There's another one. Smoke hypo, true hypo, pistachio, enigma. And I had a few pop up in my collection that are unrelated that have those same type of phenotypes. And a lot of people say hey, well, it seems recessive because I get these ones with the characteristics that define a true hypo, and then I get ones that aren't. If you look really closely, though, you can see these vague expressions of that trait. And the one thing that really distinguishes a true hypo and a pistachio is if you look at the belly. The belly's supposed to be black, right? If you look at the belly, they look like they're more in shed. They're kind of grayed out, hazy. And I say that's more of that's interesting because I say that's more of an iridophore disruption because it's not limiting to black, but it looks like it's almost hazy on top. So I'd imagine it's an iridophore change. And that's actually very interesting because there's not really any selectively line-bred traits that are altering the iridophores. Iridophores being the platelets and the skin cells that help control the intensities and hues of colors. They refract back light. So when you see a bluish hognose, no reptile produces blue pigment. So if you even see these blue pit vipers, they're not blue. There's no blue pigment. Those are going to be xanthophores, melanophores, and then the iridophores refracting back blue light waves. So we're perceiving it as blue, but they're just feeding back more blue light waves that are mixed with the yellow pigments and the melanin pigments. The one I always give an example of is blue jays. Blue jays are not blue. There's no blue pigment. Their feathers are just black and clear. They're like a smoky gray, black and clear. But the light waves that bounce off of them are blue. So we interpret them as being very blue. Oh, yeah, true hypo is the most misleading name. I agree. I joke around with my friends. I call them false hypos. I call them lie hypos. What else? I make up all kinds of dumb names. Fictitious hypos. Just keep adding to it. You know. So true hypo would help with the blue projects. Interesting one, Don. Now just because there's an iridophore change doesn't mean it will help with the blue pigmentation. Certain iridophore pitches are going to make them more blue. Another good example are chameleons. Chameleons are able to change colors because their iridophores are a lot more complex, and they're like on a lattice chain, and they alter them by shifting them, and that refracts back different light waves. So they can go from like blue and white to like reds, and those again are all just iridophore changes. Fox hypo, show off an adult storm cloud. Octopus, superior beings. What about the axanthic rhino rats? It's going to be true with any reptile. No reptile has cyanophores. There are no reptiles with cyanophores. No pigment, blue pigment cells. Now, you can see blue pigment cells in like cephalopods and stuff, but you're not going to see them in reptiles. Anyway, let me get storm clouds. Somebody wants to see an adult storm cloud. I have like a sub-adult I could show. I'll be right back. Now, this guy isn't like I said, I'd have a sub-adult, but this guy's like a large baby. I got this juvenile dude. So this is axanthic insable. And you can actually see he's got that nice kind of like bluish, kind of earth tone, gray blue hues to the scales. Especially in between those scales, you get some pretty nice ones around it, tipping on the scales on the side. Really, and it's all in the background. And again, like, well, here's the thing. Sables actually increase a lot of pigment cells, and it actually changes the iridophores, and it seems to increase the amount of iridophores because you get, if you ever notice, their cheeks are a lot more iridescent and shiny. That's because of excessive iridophores. And once you have the axanthic in there, you're removing the yellows and reds pretty much almost completely. And you're left with more melanophores and then iridophores, and you're getting this blue light refraction back. As my accountant, I'm not taking that. So one reason I'm kind of like drab today. I feel like I'm very drabbed out. It's not even the correct term, but I don't know. Anyway, I hate taxes. The taxes have been really fucking me. And it's anyway, let's get back to this. So here's a storm cloud. There's a storm cloud. So the person that asked for the storm cloud, all right, good, he hung up. Holy shit. It's the amount of paperwork. It's just like endless. Everything. You gotta go to Illinois. You need a permit for this. California, I need a sales permit. You know, it's like everybody too. I was talking about this a short bit. I'm like, everybody's like, not everybody, but there's a lot of people that are like either Republican or Democrat. It's like, how is everybody not like mostly a libertarian by now and just want the government just to leave them the fuck alone? It's like, aren't you tired of overregulation? It's like, can't we just go back to being like, I don't know, tons of laws put into place for everything? That is great. Really want to get into those. And snowbursts. Yeah, snowbursts are awesome. And snowbursts are kind of like, you know, say if you get a snowburst, you can make storm clouds with that because a snowburst is just a triple visual sable axanthic albino. Okay. Eastern hoggos are more specialized, and rhino rats are pretty straightforward if you have experience. Yeah, Bree's correct on that. Bree knows a lot. So listen to Bree. You're looking for cricket too. I think I missed part of this. Yeah, there's crickets back here. Would you recommend a rhino rat over an Eastern? Okay, that's what's the question. Yeah, I mean, it's like they're both specialized, and it's like, you know, their husbandry, like they're definitely a little more advanced. They're definitely not beginner snakes. But yeah, if you have, I'd say the Eastern hoggos are definitely a little tougher because they're specialized amphibian feeders. Stormcloud versus Blucifer. Blucifer is super Arctic sable. Super Arctic sables, though, while you get very blue ones, sometimes you get ones that aren't as blue because they have more earthrophores being produced. And if you were to put axanthic, let's say you made axanthic super Arctic sables, so a super Arctic Stormcloud, those are going to be pretty dang blue because these Blucifers that are really blue just don't have as much red pigment interference. And super Arctics are definitely on a spectrum where some have a lot more earthrophores and some have less. And so that's why certain Blucifers, you know, are more blue. Those ones just don't have as much prominent red tones coming in. If you have a lot of prominent red, that's going to take away from the blue effects. But I do have some that are pretty pink and, you know, reddish. You know, there's a lot of red pigments coming in, so they're pretty pink, and they do have some blues. And my Blucifers, the bluest ones always tend to be females. And my bluest hoggos I have in my entire collection are adult super Arctic sable females that are these ones that have less pinks in them. So here's a Stormcloud. Very awesome snake. Everybody should own one if you like hognose. If you don't, I don't know what you're doing here. Would love to see a blue hognose. So you kind of just did. That is great. Really want to get into those. It's sober. Oh, I already read all this stuff. All right. I don't know much about the Stormcloud. If you then added Arctic to that, would that have a clear background with that beautiful pattern? Arctic is such a good trait to add into everything. Like Super Arctic makes everything better. Name one thing that Super Arctic Lucies even look really good. Super Arctic's the most versatile and interesting single mutant gene because of the iridophore disruption, acceleration of black pigment, and the knocking out of a lot of background pigment, but still bolstering like certain red pigments. You know, because if you make a Super Arctic albino, you know, you're removing all that black because the albino, you can see all those pinks that are still there. So, you know, the Super Arctic is a very interesting mutant. And you're not seeing too many mutant, you know, genes in reptiles that completely change iridophores like that. Although in hoggos, we got a few. You know, Sable's an iridophore disruptor, and so is Swiss chocolate. Super Arctic, though, is definitely king of iridophore disruption, and very surprising when I made a Super Arctic Lucy. I figured they were going to have more clear throats. I didn't know it was going to do that to them, though. It was pretty extreme. It surprised me. Is that hognose trying to eat you or dig? This one's trying to dig. I just got rhinos after stressing for years and have been underwhelmed with care. I got somebody else that's been a walk in the park. I know they need lower temperatures and they need fresh water provided all the time, and they like bigger water bowls. And I know they have a slower metabolic rate, so it's not a species you probably want to overfeed. Although I'm not a pro in rhino rats. Bree knows quite a bit, though. She might be able to chime in with some more rhino rat information, or somebody else might. There might be a rhino rat guy in here, or girl, or person. I am a rat snake guy. Oh, this guy right here. So we do have a rat snake person here. In darker hogs, how do you identify RBE pastel? Well, RBE pastel, how do I identify that? First, you got to understand who you're talking to. Is it somebody that's just saying this is RBE pastel because it looks good? Is this somebody that even knows anything about RBE pastel? Yeah, he's just digging. I thought, because you asked earlier, he looks like he's inspecting my hand, but yeah, he's just digging. He's not interested in eating. But RBE pastels here, I've had people come out, like somebody is showing me these ones that are showing, they're talking, like, I talked to this one breeder, and this is like a decent sized breeder, and they're like, they said these are RBE pastels. I looked at them like, those are Arctics. And they said, well, RBE and pastel and Arctic look a lot alike. I'm like, no, they don't. But that's the thing. That's that other person's, you know, perception and interpretation. I just think they interpreted it completely wrong and very badly. Now, RBE pastel, though, that started with toffee belly stuff. And the RBE pastels are the ones that were, the Reptile Breeding Enterprise pastels. The strongest ones were from like what they call the vanilla cherry toffee bellies. And these were toffee bellies that were very bright creamy white yellow background, real bright, and then their saddles are really red. And then when you've seen them in, I'll actually pull out a good pastel. Because the thing is, then there's certain things from pastel lineage, and they have some characteristics that make them look pretty, so then it just becomes a pastel. So pretty soon, before you know it, everything's fucking pastel, and it becomes a marketing term, because like, this one's a little better because it's pastel, and it's like, that's not a pastel. That's just new people in the Hognose hobby just making things sound better than they actually are. The Hognose hobby is pretty young. If you go back 10, 15 years ago, there's like not many people that were around then that are still around now. And then also some of these people, you know, they're just hobbyists. They're not really paying attention to genetics. I really like genetics. I've been paying attention from the time I was a little kid. I've done a lot of work with polygenics with leopard geckos and African fat-tailed geckos. That actually taught me a lot that I know nowadays, especially even just the psychological aspect of people in a hobby such as like the gecko part of it, saying certain traits work a certain way when they really don't. And you see these kind of behaviors repeated, and it's just not one aspect of like one hobby. You see this similar, you know, ideology being brought into like any other community where there's line breeding. You're gonna see it with bearded dragons, crested geckos, hognose snakes. All right, Ree says rhino rats are pretty easy, honestly. I would consider Easterns more particular. Yeah, that makes sense. I thought rhino rats were a little more challenging. I guess it's like a lot of these things that are considered challenging, it's really about your setup. Because like Brazilian rainbow boas can be considered more advanced. And while I probably say, yeah, they are, they're actually extremely simple. You just don't get them really hot and provide them with a large water dish and a substrate that has a degree of moisture in it. You can do like the COCO blocks, and like that's it. Actually, I kept Brazilian rainbow boas and bred them for years with no heat source at all, and I did really good. They're actually one of the easiest snakes. They're very prone to drying out, and so they're ultra easy. But you know, a new person, if you're just going to get like a basic set, a lot of it's really about wrong setups, and that sounds like with the rhino rats. As long as you have the good setup and you keep them at the appropriate temperatures, they're going to be pretty easy. And like what Bree said, yeah, Eastern hogs very specialized feeders, while rhino rats, as far as I know, the rodent diet for them does really well. Do I have any jags? I don't, but I have something I could show you that's similar to a jag. It just popped up. So basically be similar to a jag, but not jag lineage related, because it is completely unrelated. It came from a project where I was trying to make a multi-morph combination, and there's no history of jag in it, but I've been getting some very jag-looking animals. And so that's the thing. When you get, let's say you get some really jag animals consistently out of a project, keep those back, start selectively line breeding them, you're going to definitely improve those characteristics, and it's going to start to become stronger and stronger the more generations you take it. Typically, not all stuff works that way. Sometimes you can get like there are certain leopard geckos that were hypermelanistic, and people tried to selectively line breed them for a long time and never really got that far. Not all polygenics are created equal. Polygenics are actually very interesting because there are these little micro changes in different wild types, and these micro changes can sometimes be selectively line bred to be a drastic improvement, and then certain ones are kind of hard to improve on, and there's probably just not many alleles that are contributing to that look. And that's what poly means. It means multiple. So when it's polygenics, it's multiple alleles that are attributing to a characteristic. And in all cases, well, not all cases, I don't want to say that. Genetics are very interesting. And a lot of people in the reptile hobby, including myself, we just kind of know like the bare minimum, or the basics, I should say. But most polygenics are just wild type alleles, and you're selectively line breeding them to appear a certain way. Like a good example is like, a skin color in humans. That's polygenic. There's many alleles that contribute to skin color, and that's polygenic. There's multiple alleles. Hair color too, even eye color to a degree. But then you have things like the recessive blue eye. Subarctic lavender, superior rays. Yeah, subarctic lavenders are awesome. Yeah, Brisa could just be talking because Asian rats are a thing. Asian rats are very cool. I like the old world rats a lot. Oh, there's my accountant again. We got about another hour. I'm going to tell him real quick. Hey, Dave, I'm in a podcast. Can I call you back like in an hour?
Okay, so you want me? What can we do? Some stuff. Call me back then. That's okay.
All right, look at I'll have the totals for you on that one account with all my expenses for electric and the gas and everything.
Okay, how about demo? You just call me in an hour.
I'll call you in an hour. All right, bye. Oh. Antarctica is the worst fucking name on the face of the planet. It's the worst name. I can't wait for a trait that has similar characteristics that can be described to like an Arctic, and it's called an Antarctic. It's terrible. They're gonna change. The guy's gonna change it. There ain't no way because everybody's gonna message him. It's like, yeah, you want to be around for the next 10, 20 years. It will be. You'll have to forever explain it to anybody entering the hognose hobby, which there will be plenty all the time. It will become the same friggin' like it's like that movie Memento. You know that movie? Like every 5 minutes he has to write down shit and he has to redo everything. It's gonna be like that. It's gonna be horrible. Fuck. You gotta do with hognose being chewed on every 2 weeks. So I was like, my hognose chewed on me. My hand's all inflamed. I went to the emergency room. I didn't know what to do. First, watch the videos on how to remove them. And everybody's selling a hognose. You know, I think people are getting more in the habit of it. Sometimes I almost forget. Most of the time I'm not forgetting. Somebody buys a hognose. You're like, is this your first hognose? You kind of question them. Yeah, it is. Like, all right, do this. If one starts if it accidentally mistakes you for food, it starts chewing on you. Don't let it chew on you like Joe Monahan for 5 minutes and say, look at my baseball mitt inflamed hand. It's all fucked up. It's like, yeah, dude, it's like, of course, you let it chew on you for a long period of time. It's not good. Those foreign proteins that are going into your hand or any part of your body's going to cause edema. It's going to send histamine in that area. It's not going to like it. A bunch of foreign saliva going into your body. Go figure, you inflame. Where do you normally get your scents for feeding babies? Well, I do sardine, chicken bone broth. I like bone broth. The chicken bone broth better than regular chicken broth. You can get lizard works really good. Salamander, frog, toad. The one thing is there certain scents do work better and will work more often on more majority hognose, but there is no magic scent that works on all hognose. They all have their different dispositions. They all have their own quirks. And really, the way I look at it is there's no bad feeder hognose. You just got to find the right presentation. I mean, I guess you could get a bad feeder if it's like a weak hognose or there's something like internally wrong with it. Or if it's a sick hognose, there could be a few other problems. But as long as it's a healthy hognose, these things do want to eat. You just got to find the right prey type and you got to find the right presentation. Sometimes it can be very, tough where it needs to be like a small lizard. Like if I have like like say they have like 10 baby hognose that won't eat anything. Like you've tried everything, live pinks, you've tried scented live, you tried drop feeder live, scented, you tried all the scents, chicken liver, trout, salmon, sardine, you've tried frog, toad, salamander, lizard, and it's not working. Most of the time, if you go through that whole, that whole montage of, scents, and the best way to keep those too is just freeze them individually in cups. If it doesn't work, generally those ones, if you throw in like a small live lizard, they will eat it. Like if I have like a runt leopard gecko that's like not going to make it, and it's like doesn't look good, and I have a baby hognose that won't eat anything, like 8-9 times out of 10, those hognose that won't eat anything will eat that small gecko. A lot of Western hognose in the wild are eating small lizards when they are babies. A lot of people say they think they're doing more frogs and toads, but there's a lot of evidence that they eat small lizards. All right. Antarctic, Arctic, axanthic, albino, anaconda. Yeah, Antarctic, axanthic, anaconda, skull face. Let's come out with another trait, too. Let's put true hypo in there. An RBE pastel, shadow, fucking true hypo, pistachio, Antarctic, Arctic. At that point, I'd be interested in that snake. I'd be like, that's cool. Ricardi, yeah, I figured I thought that was you, Anthony. I have a AAA albino axanthic, and kind of cool. Call it the battery. Which combo is the Antarctic? Antarctic is his own, single new gene, like Don said. I'm sad I still don't have a regular AAA. Maybe someday. That someday could be very soon. I have a few Easterns. If setup is right, they're not that bad. It's so cool. We've gone from normal hognose to these insane colors. Yeah, Ellen. Yeah, things have come quite a long way with all these morph combinations. Who found Antarctic? Somebody over in China. And so that's the thing. There's a language barrier there. But once they're explained, like, hey, this is a really bad idea. And all you got to do is tell them, is like, you know, if somebody keeps asking, like, what's the difference between this and that, and you have to keep explaining stuff, that's going to happen with Antarctic and Arctic. You got to change the name. Change it to something completely opposite. Name it like, I don't know, like the Bolo or something, or like, I don't know, anything. Like, I don't know, Blue Mist, anything else. Don't even put an A in it. Find a word that doesn't even have an A or a C. Call it that. The Bog, something. I believe it's an incomplete dominant too, but I could be wrong. Wondered if, yeah, that's the thing. I kind of was going to wait until there's more information out. And that's the one thing too. Like, I don't want to say I guess I'm always slightly skeptical sometimes of new traits because there is a lot of stuff assigned incorrectly, such as like what I'd say is true hypo, is one, pistachio, you know, shadow, not dominant. That's a polygenic. Leopard geckos, I'd say like Hognose is not really happening. Leopard gecko is happening way more often. Leopard gecko is happening like pretty much anytime somebody had something new there. But this is dominant, and it's like that's a selectively line bred snow. You didn't come up with some new dominant snow. Yeah, well, I already kind of went off on the Antarctic stuff. Eastern, okay, I just don't believe they're a species that should be fed a rodent exclusive diet. Therefore, I consider them exactly. Bree, I agree 100% on that. It's like the lily white cresties. Desert ghost ball python. That's an interesting one because I did ask Benson about it a little bit. There are some very peculiar things with that, such as like the only time they're doing desert ghost to desert ghost and they're not seeing desert ghost is when there's multiple other mutant alleles there. Nobody's witnessed that as far as I know, and I know the Bells haven't, which they're the originator and they have the largest collection and most pairings of desert ghosts. They've said they've never bred desert ghost to desert ghost and not got all desert ghosts. Now they said there are 3 phenotypes of desert ghosts. You know, you could consider it that because there's those really white and black ones. There's those ones that are more like axanthic looking and they're kind of blackish. But see, that can be, you know, just another polygenic interfering with that. And then you get these desert ghosts that are very like bright. There's some like lemony yellow, like greenish to them. And again, those could be like polygenic variants of what I think that is actually a recessive. I've never seen a polygenic act like a desert ghost. That is a mutant. For one, I'll say this. That's a mutant allele. So if it is poly, there's one allele acting as a mutant, and then there's additive effects ones. But I haven't brushed up on it. I wish I did for this conversation if I had it here because I haven't looked at it in months. But I would actually say desert ghost, based on what my knowledge is, recessive. And the results, when I brought up to Benson and I said, hey, could this just be really one recessive? And then, you know, there's polygenics, you know, adding to the attribute. He says that could be a possibility, and that's kind of what they're looking at. The odd thing is saying that it's this thing, it behaves as a poly. And behaves as a recessive, behaves as a mutant. It's definitely a mutant. But if it is a mutant, and let's say it is poly, it's like, well, it's a poly on 3 separate loci, 3 separate chromosome locations. It's like, well, how does a mutant pop up simultaneously in 3 separate locations and gets passed on and carried on? Because this came from a wild individual. So the history of it with genetics doesn't actually make sense for it to be a poly. That's my one problem and gripe with that right from the start. I'm like, a poly can't, like, they would have to find some way to explain how a poly mutant is able to do that. But the interesting thing is, like, let's say like the hypogene in people that makes you people with red hair and freckles. There is there's like 3 different like they're not 3. They're basically mutants that are affecting 3 different protein. Actually, I wish if Ryan is here. Is Ryan here? We were just talking about this. Ryan from Sailor Serpent. He said he's going to be coming on here. I was kind of hoping we get into some genetics there, but maybe this. I don't know. Ryan was in my live before I did this. You should know. Let me scroll down. Is Ryan here? He's not here. Pale Scales asks, do I have Antarctics? I don't. If I do, I'm going to tell that guy. He's not. He's only released 1 so far. But anyway, like freckles in people. I was talking to Ryan about it. Ryan was telling me about this, and that that's linked to the hypo trait in people. And being linked means it's a other allele that's being carried over. It's basically in a different loci, but the loci is very close. So it's like chromosomes, they have a bunch of DNA code, a bunch of different allele information. And the thing is, we think that they get each allele is contributed like a 50-50, but a lot of these things like break off in clusters. So there's a couple or multiple alleles being inherited at one time. And the interesting thing about it was when I was reading it, they said geneticists and scientists still didn't completely comprehend or understand how these traits in the freckle gene and red hair gene completely worked. And it was essentially kind of like, with that, it was a linked trait. So basically, again, like I said, that those alleles that are affecting, so let's say freckles and red hair, were very close together. So they're pretty much being inherited simultaneously. But then I don't want to get too much into it, but because there's other mutant alleles that were like similar, like there's not only one type of freckle gene and red hair gene in people, there's a few different ones. And they're different like mutant protein inhibitors. So they inhibit the proteins that are essential for, melanin. And anyhow, with the desert ghost, it just doesn't make sense that it's a poly, because it's like, the one thing is, they kept finding like there's the one pair of alleles they said it was pretty much essential for producing it. So it's like, if you're really, saying that really one pair of these alleles are the most essential for producing this phenotype, those are being, the trait is really riding on mostly one pair of alleles, which would be like, okay, if it's affecting one, that's not poly, and it is behaving recessive. But I might not be completely right on that, but there's definitely some things that raise suspicion to me that is not a poly, because I've never seen a poly. I've worked with many polygenic traits. There's been a lot of people too. It's kind of hard just to take my word for it, because like nobody really knows my history. I could be wrong. I'm not always right, of course. I've learned a lot from genetics. I've learned a lot from being wrong many times. But I've worked with a lot of selectively line-bred traits, a lot of different polygenics. I've never seen anything behave like Desert Ghost. That's a poly. Yeah, I will say this. It's definitely not derived from wild-type alleles, selectively line-bred to look like that, which most polys are. That is definitely a mutant allele. While it's maybe one mutant allele with two other loci areas that are contributing to it, which again, that would be kind of on line with more of a recessive. But there are some interesting things, like I was going to bring it up later, but like the cinnamon hognose, that's a mutant. Cinnamon hognose is a mutant, but is definitely a poly. So that's again, I think something very interesting, because like with genetics, we have like incomplete dominant, recessive, and those are the Mendelian genetics. And then we have polygenics, which are multiple alleles that contribute to a phenotype. And these are wild type alleles. But wild type alleles, vary. Even when they're being passed on, there's these micro changes in them. So I was like, well, if there's mutant alleles and then normal alleles with micro changes, there's got to be a spectrum to this. There's no way it's like just, these are like this and these are like that. Especially when it comes to talking about hereditary traits of phenotypes and like reptiles. It's like, who's studying this stuff? Like hardly anybody. There's like anybody that's like, putting together like large grants and studies trying to figure out genetics. They're going to be like studying, hereditary diseases and stuff like that. And some of the information that we get from genetics are from studying hereditary diseases. And there are polygenic hereditary diseases. And so there might be answers in that, reading more about that. So yeah, there's a lot there. And I'm going to stop talking because I feel like I'm just going to trail off. Yeah, Devin's creatures. You could also try frogs and sardines. Those are very common, like frogs. And I've actually tried frog and it had it not work on certain hognoses, but then I go and use the frogs like insides. I use the liver and have good results with that. So, say if the frog doesn't work, get in the guts next time and try that. Sable lavender is decently purple. Yeah, and Arctic's going to sharpen it up. And actually, somebody asked about that earlier with storm cloud and yeah, Arctic. Arctic definitely heightens contrast and kind of pixelate stuff sometimes. So an Arctic storm cloud is going to be really sharpened and nice looking. Yeah, Boss Hogs has one. He has some sable labs, Arctic sable labs. He has a super Arctic sable lab. I have a super Arctic sable lab Conda, and I have a regular lab sable. The true purple hognose morph better be found as a grimace. I like that. Yeah, somebody, Pale Scale said, yeah, definitely grimace would be a very good name for any hognose morph. But took live no issues. Yeah, Holly, live actually works pretty good on actually a decent amount of hognose that don't want to eat. So that's why, like, if you're going to have like a decent amount of hognose or you're going to breed hognose, it's definitely very beneficial to have access to live. Maybe not breed them yourself, but have a friend or know somebody that's nearby that you can get live mice from, or breed a few of your own. I have 2 racks of breeding mice. I hate it, but you know, it's very convenient and nice. And sometimes the mice are kind of fun. They're cute. I mean, you have to feed them off, so you can't get too attached, but there's some cool colors. I like throwing the seeds in there and watching them nibble the seeds. That's pretty cute, even though these things are gonna, I mean, even if you aren't feeding them off, these things don't live long. They live like 2 years max. And that's if you're lucky. Jeff, could you share with us the criteria for retiring your hognose breeders, male or females? That's a good question. The longest female I had that bred consistently was 12 consecutive seasons. That's 12 consecutive successful breeding seasons. And she died when she was about almost 17. She is a very nice hognose. I think the 4th hognose I ever had or I ever got. And actually, I almost bought her, and I had almost enough allowance money set up. And my dad bought her without me knowing it. He did this on purpose. I was like 13. I was 13 at the time. I went back up to buy it, and they're like, somebody just bought it. And I was all bummed out, all irritated. And so then my dad purposely watched me be upset for the rest of the reptile show. And then halfway on the way home, he handed her to me. That was a pretty good prank. That was a good one. That was a good one. Actually, my dad was here earlier, which he just stopped by. And I was like, you want to be here for the podcast? He's like, no. He goes, I don't know anything about, well, he knows a little bit about hognose, but he was in his like jacket covered in paint, and he just like walked away. So he's not in the podcast due to that. Super Arctic Lavender Sable Conda. Can we see it? You can see it. Update on the Super Arctic Conda Sable Lavender. Okay, same question. I'll get that. Maybe I'll just try live. Yeah, live works really good on certain hognose. You know, it works very good, especially on your more defensive ones that don't like human presence when they're being offered a meal. And then it being a live organism probably helps it a lot. That's the thing. If you have hognose again that won't eat absolutely anything, like a small salamander, frog, or lizard, pretty much works on those ones. Like that's a hognose that won't eat. Like you tried all the scents, you tried live, you tried everything. If you have like a small salamander, frog, or lizard, they pretty much always eat that. That's something my parents would do. Yeah, it was pretty funny. He did that to me twice. Anyway, let me get the Super Arctic Sable Lavender Anaconda. And she looks pretty good. She might not show up that great on camera, but we'll still get her out. Oh, one time I was at a reptile show. I was probably like 22. Yeah, I was probably like 21, 22. And I had some hognose with me for sale. And my dad and I bred geckos together. So we were primarily selling geckos. And I had some of my little hognose selection for sale. This one guy was looking at these hognose snakes. And he was talking about buying the one. And it kept going back and forth. And so at one point, I walked away from my table to walk around. And I came back and the hognose was gone. I told my dad, I was like, oh, that guy bought it. I was like, bought what snake? I was like, that hognose, or that guy coming back, that one's gone. My dad's like, I didn't sell any hognose. And I'm like, are you serious? He goes like, yeah, somebody must have stole it. And I fucking freaked out. I was so pissed. And I was like, that guy probably stole it. And so my dad let me be pissed off. I was looking for the dude. Then my dad's like, come here. And he's like, he goes, nobody stole it. And he goes, here's your money. I was like, oh. And my dad's like, you got an anger problem. He goes, you need to address that. I'm like, so he's gaslighting me so bad at the show just for entertainment. And here's the Super Arctic Sable Lavender Anaconda. Now, being in my gloves with the blue background, my blue shirt, it's probably taken away from it a bit. But this snake she's very interesting. She's got this, what the hell is that out of there? It's a very tough color to describe. Like in between her scales, it's kind of like you have this like smoky blue gray. and her background is kind of like, it's got this light muted pink, but it's this earthy gray purple color. Sometimes the best way to photograph these or video them is having them like actually on a wood chip background or like a COCO background. That helps a lot. Your dad's traumatizing. Yeah, he's fun to grow up with. It's always entertainment. And her belly's like it almost looks black, but it's like grape. It's like a deep grape, like dark grape purple. Yeah, I know, that's great. My dad's like, you got anger problems, man. Oh. Yeah, she looks better in person, I'd say. The other thing is, too, Super Arctic and Sable are both variable. Lavender is, to a degree, variable, but I feel like it definitely is. So this is only one. This is the only one that exists right now. So as we see more of them, we'll see ones with different color palettes or like different hues and tones. Probably get ones that are a little darker for sure. Ones that are a little more bluish. I think her sitting back here is kind of giving you a better idea of what she looks like actually. Yeah, her belly's like dark grape. Yeah, it's too bad she wasn't a male, but she's a female. I'll still take it. Yeah, she's pretty good size now. I'd say she's got to be 65 grams, 70 grams. Probably getting close to 70 grams here. Yeah, the Sable is one of the best traits out there. It's definitely an enhancer trait. Increases pigments, changes iridophores, increases the amount of iridophores. So Sable, again, is another trait that's like pretty much makes everything better. Super Arctic too, so it's pretty easy to say that like Super Arctic Sable, anything is going to look pretty interesting. And I don't want to say better, but from, what a lot of people would, refer to as being better, yes, that would apply. Obviously, all these morph combos are interesting. Like even a moonbeam, let's say you have moon, like this is a moonbeam here, but Sable. Moonbeams look different. And moonbeams, in my opinion, actually offer something very different that this doesn't with the Sable included, which the moonbeam is like you have more purple tones actually, and kind of like I'd say actually in some cases a little more bluish. So, a lot of times like obviously one with Sable definitely is worth more and definitely more valuable for breeding projects, but moonbeams and moonstones as they are very special and very nice. Is the Arctic times Sable that makes the super dark Sable? Yeah, well, Arctic Sable. So I have some very black Arctic Sables. Arctic's variable, Sable's variable. I have some Arctic Sables that are damn near all black. Super Arctic Sables, very variable. I have black ones, I have black and pink ones, I have the black and blue ones, I have black and gray ones, and ones are a little bit like everything in between. Picture on wood chips. I have one of her pictures posted, but this girl right here. But it's like more like just her head, just her upper body. Yeah, see, Bree says she prefers moonstones. Like I like moonbeams a lot. Moonbeams like a really hard one to beat. I have some pretty insane purple blue ones, and it's like not going to change them much. Like there's not going to be anything that really improves them much, I should say. Any albino Swiss chocolate? I have albinos het Swiss. I don't have any actual albino Swiss. So I get up close of her face. And her head structure is pretty good. If you ever had a premature egg, my hog laid one very soft egg 2 days after pre-lay shed with a poop. Yes, that's and then she laid the rest 5 days later. Yeah, sometimes usually those eggs are laid early. I've never had any that were good. But yeah, sometimes when they defecate, an egg that isn't fertile kind of comes loose and is laid and pushed out with that stool. It seems like their eggs are less likely to be fertilized, are lower in succession to being laid, and so they're more easily expelled, and that's probably an evolutionary thing. So yeah, it's not super common, but it's common enough. If you bred hognose for a long enough time, yeah, you do see that. I've had many hognose that will lay a slug or two, days or a week or even 2 weeks before laying. Usually it's like days or like a week before laying. And then a lot of times, yeah, they're accompanied by stool. And then, when they are ready to lay and their eggs are fully mature and they're essentially what their water breaks and they're now able to lay, then you got good eggs in there. So just because they lay something like a slug or two, like early or drop here or there, does not mean that their whole clutch is going to be bad. They oftentimes will have, good eggs in the clutch or a lot of good eggs. Hey, Max, how's it going, man? Swiss so far seems to be slightly better enhancer than Sable, or at least a different. Exactly, Don. I'd say it's a different kind of enhancer. I wouldn't say one's better or worse than the other because they both have different things they do. I would definitely say it's a different type of enhancer, and that's the best way to look at it. Yeah, the first egg went bad. I was worried she was egg bound. Good to hear it happened. Yeah, Raquel. That's pretty, common. It's not like, again, it's not going to happen with all your hognose, but if you breed enough hognose, you see it. You see that happen here and there. Layer double clutch very sporadically like that. Only 2 are still good from 8 she laid. Yeah, Jessica, if they lay a whole clutch very sporadically, generally there's going to be very few good ones in there because when they're laying good eggs, they should be laid all within the window when they're ready to be laid. If a hognose is ready to lay eggs and she's dropping them and, laying them, and she, let's say, becomes binded or exhausted and is unable to pass the others, you really got about like a 6-8 hour window to get them out before they're deprived of oxygen and they start going bad. A lot of times the egg close to the vent will remain good longer because it's so close to the vent, it's able to get some oxygen, so it's not starved of oxygen. So yeah, if you have a hognose that's laying on average like every half hour, an hour, and then let's say 4 hours go, she's not laying the last or the next one, I would try to assist it out if it is close to the vent. I do that with quite a few hognose. I have a video pinned to my Instagram on how to do that. And basically I just mimic the contractions and the form the female hognose would naturally use to pass the egg. And I explained that briefly in that video. Actually, Elton, we got to post that video because I have one where I show pushing out multiple eggs from a female and actually successfully pushing out multiple eggs from one female over a period of many days, just allowing her to get the next egg close to the vent, because that's the best and easiest way to expel, help, push those eggs out. Trying to push them out when they're real high up in their body, you can definitely cause a lot of issues because you might push the oviduct down with the egg and then have to push the oviduct out. If that happens, more likely to have problems. I'll tell you what I do. You don't know if it's a lot of eggs, you don't want to do this. It's going to need surgery, but if it's just 1 or 2, or if it's 1 in the oviduct, I just make a light tear, push it out through the oviduct opening, and then the oviduct, you want to keep it clean, retracts back into the female, and that little tear will heal. And a lot of times you want to run them on antibiotics. And I've had ones breed like that next season and have no issues. There is stress and trauma to the oviduct when they are laying, so sometimes tears do occur, or tears like that occurring, probably not, but their bodies are naturally able to repair them, especially from one whole season to the next. It's a very long time to heal. I don't use incubators. I just incubate them right in my reptile rooms. So my rooms are warm enough where I just incubate them right in the room. And that saves me a lot of headache and stress. Basically, I walk into essentially the incubator, just my room. I have the shelf there, and I can tell if there's anything wrong based on, the room temperature and, my thermostats. I'm never really having any failures or anything like that. But, have alarm system set in place. After locking, what are the chances they just don't give you eggs? It's a low percent. I had one female lock, and she just didn't do anything. Didn't even develop follicles. Didn't even lay a slug. It's a small percent. I'd say it's like 3 or 4%, maybe 5% max. Can you show us an example of a breeding size female? It's a little difficult to tell when a female is ready to breed. It is better to go by weight or body size. Devin, both. Body, here's the thing. You want them to have the mature look. I have bred from some very small females. I've bred females under 120 grams before, but they have the age and they have the look. And by the look, I mean just a mature look. They have a big, broad, diamond-shaped head. They have a nice, wide ventral, and they look very mature. They're just small, and they're going to give you a small clutch, and most likely the fertility is going to be very good, and they're not going to have issues, most likely. these smaller females are more in line with appropriate wild breeding, behavior and size. These very large females that are producing these grossly oversized clutches, in contrast to what they would normally produce in the wild, that's where you're running into problems. So these overfed large females that are producing these massive clutches are the ones that are running into more issues. The problem is a lot of people just want to get these massive clutches. While they look good, not necessary. I breed small females all the time. Look at me. I got tons of hognose. These are all hognose. It's a lot. You don't need your female to be 400, 500, 600 grams. Shit, I had a female once that was like 450 grams. She was gravid, and I thought this female was going to lay a massive clutch. She laid 9 eggs, but the eggs were gigantic. So sometimes big doesn't always equal, many eggs. Obviously, the larger females, more often are laying big clutches. But I'll grab a female to show as an example. See, they want to see like a small breeder female. Small breeder. Those locks, those fucking locks. Nice. Holy shit. I just got a good lock over there, so let's look at some feed. This female has been fed twice, and she's about to be paired. This female, I don't know how much she weighs. It's not that I don't care. It's like I just eyeball them, and I can tell. So if you look at her head, it's nice and wide. It's very mature looking. She doesn't have like that baby face anymore, where it's like a plump, like kind of like smaller head. Her head is very prominent. And then look at her ventral. See, her anal plate is pretty wide here. Match that up to my thumb. So she's got a nice, wide anal plate there. What I'd call her hips. She's got nice wide hips there. And she's got like a healthy, like, just like kind of like broad body. And this female is like, she's a het Swiss. And I notice a lot of my Swiss stuff, they're kind of a little on the shorter side, their body structure. I'd say stretched out, she's probably about 23 inches. And that's one thing. I like my females to be like, closer to 2 foot. She might be 22 inches. I'd say if I had to guess the weight on this female, she'd be like about 150, 160 grams. And once I pair her and I start hitting her with food, she will actually grow and gain in weight and size. And then by the end of the breeding season, once her weight's back, or, her body weight's back up optimally, I'd say she'll probably be close to 200 grams. She might be like a 190. So basically what I'm looking for is that mature broad head, nice boxy body. She's not just like fat and overfed. She's close to 2 years old, or at least 2 years old. This female is going to be going on basically 2 when I pair her. I like them to be like, I always go to like 20-month rule. I won't even consider breeding a hognose female unless she's over 20 months. That's like, I'm usually looking more around like 24 months to like, 2.5 years old. Your 3-year-old females are going to do extremely well. And the thing is, you can see she's kind of like, well, I can't get her really to curl up, but she's actually, if I get her to curl up in my hand, she's like a nice handful. And that's one of my smaller females that I'll be pairing. And she might even be like around like 140, 150 grams. But, again, she's only had like a couple meals. She is going to gain a little more weight as I'm feeding her while pairing. Here's another girl. This is an LG Woma, high percent. And she's actually a little on the smaller side. Her anal plate, actually, I would almost like that to be a little wider. This girl is of age. She's definitely on the little bit of younger side. She's like, this feels like right at like that 2-year mark. But the one thing is like that, this feels like a little like, where I'm like, she's a little iffy. If I was going to say that, is like her anal plate isn't very wide. And so actually she's one I might even consider. Now I'm looking at that. I might even pair her next year. And her face, if you look, is a little smaller. Notice her head isn't as broad. But that can vary. You know, Hognose's structure varies quite a bit due to a lot of the different lineages. And, you know, Lemon Ghost is a highly selectively line bred, you know, project. So the body structure, like I've seen some that have shorter bodies. Mine don't have the shorter body characteristics. Most of my older LGs, I'd say their body structure is like very in line with very healthy like look, anatomically very healthy. So her features are a little smaller, and that's just probably because she's a little less mature, and they all mature at kind of like different rates. Like, you know, depends on how their metabolic rate is. Again, if you say if you're raising a hognose and you know, so more of a slow grower or it's not eating as much, you know, it's metabolizing slower. It's not eating as much. So that snake's going to take a little longer to mature. You know, hognose in the wild, they're having large cutoff windows where they're in brumation. And at that point, their body's in a state of sleep. Their metabolic rate is dropped off. They're not growing, you know, at that point. So that's like wild hognose, you know, they're probably taking like 5-6 years before they're breeding in the wild. Here's another good example of a younger female, around 2 years old. Very good for breeding. I really like her body structure. She's a lot like that Het Swiss I showed. You see she has nice, long, big tail for a female. Anal plate, nice and wide. Match it up to my thumb. Nice, clunky looking head. And then overall, she's, again, probably close to about 2 foot. And she's got that nice boxy body. She's kind of flat on top. Sides are, you know, nice and flat. She's not like a round porker. She's not overfed. You know, she's not lean. She's just nice and muscular. Females can breed under 2 years. Well, yeah, a little bit. I don't really suggest it. Like, I know there's one guy who's breeding Swiss chocolates at like 16 and 17 months, and he had horrible success. And he's like, "There's something wrong with these Swiss females." I'm like, "Yeah, you bred them too young. That's the problem." I say that's like the bare minimum. Have I bred females under 2 years old? Yes, they're close to 2 though. Am I doing it often? No. Most of the time, I'm waiting until they're 2, 2.5. Sometimes even 3. A lot of times I'm doing like 2.5. There's not much benefit in pushing females. And now what makes me breed a female a little younger is if it's a project I really like and I think the female is very easily able to breed and she's not going to have problems based on her body structure and the way she looks and everything, I'll go ahead and breed her. And do I have problems with breeding those little younger ones? No, as long as I kind of look at these set of rules of good body structure. And this female is signaling to me, again, listening to the hognose, like this female is signaling to me that she's ready to breed. So let's say this female is like 20 months old. She's got the boxy head. She's appropriate size, has the wide anal plate. You know, she is young, but the reason she's able to breed is she was a good feeder and her metabolic rate was highly elevated being in captivity versus, you know, a wild counterpart. And she would be more in line with like a 4 or 5-year-old hognose in the wild, just due to their metabolic timeline. You know, these captive ones, they're eating really good, and it's a problem if you do it too much, but these captive ones, they have mostly metabolic highs, and they're not really dipping much because you have them at high temperatures all the time, and you're feeding them routinely. These ones in the wild, though, they have winters, big metabolic dive, springs. The springs are shaky. It's not consistently warm. You have cold fronts, you have warm fronts, you have booms of lots of available food, and then you have probably some periods of droughts of food where there's not as much. So you're having these big influxes. Sometimes they're probably eating, absorbently in the wild, and then they're having these big metabolism spikes, and then again a big drop, and then a spike, and a drop. And so fasting in captivity to a degree, actually, I think is definitely okay and actually very healthy. So for a lot of my females, once they get around this size, I cut them back to like feeding them like every 8, 10, 12 days. I vary it. I don't have like a set schedule where it's like every 7 days and it's like, well, now I'm going to go to every exactly 10 days. I'll vary it a bit. Naturally, they're supposed to be a little varied in the wild, and they need some like metabolism drop-offs. If you're just constantly feeding them every 5 days, or you keep feeding them up until there's 250, 300 grams before you breed them, those are the people that are running into more problems, such as egg binding and stuff like that. When you're doing this method, when you're waiting, like again, I'm saying those are the bare minimums. I go mostly 2.5 years. Like this female here, I can look at it, but this female's about 2.5 years old. This is when I kind of like really start considering breeding them. Around 2, yes, I will breed some, and even some a little younger, but more often I'm doing 2, 2.5 to 3, all in that range. And then 2's, yeah, it's kind of around the minimum, but you just want to look at the snake. Snake looks good, has all the qualities that you look for in a mature, ready to breed hognose. They're not going to probably have problems. I mean, there's never a foolproof way. The foolproof way is just not breed hognose. But I remember one year I bred like 150 females, and they were all smaller females. And I think I had like only 2 mild cases of egg binding. But that's the best I ever got. And that was probably more just kind of luck to a degree. Because then the following season I had more issues and I was doing the same exact thing, Anyway, I'm going to put her back. And here I have a moonbeam het coral male. And this dude is, he's actually like 55 grams. And you can see his head structure is actually pretty good. Is it perfect? No. Would I breed him still? Yeah. His head isn't like really, really short. Mostly I'd say he's a little different. Like his head being like, say, like a little more roundish and small. It's probably attributed more to the super Arctic gene there. And this is not a result of inbreeding. And you can see his eyes, are very reasonably sized. He's a very nice looking moonbeam. Super Arctic lavender anaconda. This guy's actually het albino too. And so for males, if we're talking about females, I've had males as small as like 30 grams breed. Just as long as they got the age. Can you breed like really young small males? Sometimes. But it varies between each individual. You will get those, those extremes because there's a spectrum to everything. Can you get like a 7, 8 month old male to breed? Sure. Is it going to happen consistently? Definitely not. Why do they sometimes eat their eggs? Is that a result of husbandry issue? Good question, Lisa. Possibly a little bit to that. I do know if they feel like their nesting site's compromised, they will be more likely to eat them. And so sometimes if their nesting site isn't 100% like secure feeling to them, yeah, they're more likely to eat their eggs. And I've actually witnessed that with females laying their eggs, burying them, me seeing it and saying, wow, she did a really good job. Let me go get my phone because I don't have it on me. I'm going to film this. Me coming back down, and she's got her face digging back in there and going to eat the eggs because I disturbed her. And then, like, if you're watching them lay eggs, and they're a lot more in tune to their surroundings when they're close to laying. They're very sensitive to it. And so it's a catch-22. You have to look at them, and you have to give them water and food, and you have to interact with them, and you have to try to catch them laying. But it seems like these things also make them more likely or more prone to want to eat their eggs due to the nest site disturbance or nest site compromise. So if you offered, let's say, a hognose in a very large enclosure, let's say like a really big, like bioactive enclosure, and you had like an area where it could get very quiet, and had like a nesting site where it could go down like 10, 12 inches into the substrate, I'd say those ones would definitely have a less likely, instinct to want to eat their eggs for sure. And I've kind of observed that with larger egg boxes, and I'd make like a hide in the substrate, like to make the substrate really deep, and I'd make a hide like halfway down in the box, and then a hognose would dig down underneath that hide and make a nesting cavity. And some of the nesting cavities they made were like beautiful, and they'd lay their eggs and they'd be stacked up perfectly all in a row. And so yeah, I think some of it has to do with that. It's kind of hard though to provide them these very large nesting sites. I've made sometimes their entire enclosure a nesting site. Somebody who has like very, very massive enclosures for their hognose would be more likely to do it. Obviously, a lot of those hognose breeders don't have like absorbently large enclosures where you could offer like a 12-inch deep, 14-inch deep nesting box that's 2 by 3 foot. That's or 2 by 2 foot would be probably plenty. It's in like a quiet little area, but you'd have to do a lot of experimenting with that. A lot of this is just me like observing certain things, and some of these are just like a hypothesis. I don't have 100% proof of that. Are they ever eating their eggs in the wild? I'd say it's very unlikely. I think they go in their nest cavities, they hollow them out, and as they're laying, their vent is in the back. They're laying the eggs. They bury them. The funny thing is, they actually use their head to bury their eggs. I've watched them actually do this. They actually scoop and use their heads to bury their eggs. I don't know any other species that are doing anything like that. I know king cobras will actually nest and use their bodies to push leaves in a circular pattern and actually make a spot to deposit their eggs. But I'd say hognose snakes are actually like a kind of like a true nesting animal where they dig out a cavity, much like a turtle does. They deposit their eggs, and then these goofy dudes use their shovel faces to rebury them, which is extremely cool. I imagine sometimes they're probably maybe even using their tail and like back end, but when I've come across them, I've actually seen them using their heads to mound dirt up. Oh, thank you, Alan. I know in ball python, some recessives can have het markers that people have picked up for a couple of G's. Any such things in hogs? Yeah, a little bit, but they're not foolproof. Like I had these one het markers with my het Swiss chocolate. I had this one Posset Swiss. She had this het marker, like very evident. And I bred her to a Swiss, and she double clutched. And I got a bunch of eggs, and there was not one Swiss, so she wasn't het. Unless I got horrible odds, but there was like 24 babies. I'm pretty certain she's not het. A lot of het sables. I've seen het Lucy's too, especially the males have reduced head pattern. Again, I've seen it in leopard geckos too, where like say Blizzard and Murphy patternless have really high speckled, hets. The hets are very high speckled, and the Possets generally are very high speckled too. A lot of times the high speckled ones are het, but a lot of times we're breeding 66%ers, so that's 2/3 chance. So you already have a high probability it's going to be het. But I've had some animals that have markers that end up not being het. So is it foolproof in hognose? Definitely not. You'd have to take a large sample size, and I think if you pick out these ones with the markers, let's say if you have 66%ers or 50%ers, and you're only picking out ones with these attributes, I think you're gonna score higher than the percent pass that they were het for. I don't have enough of that. This year actually is pretty deep. I got some of these Posset Swiss chocolates, and I got this one het marker on them. So we'll see how good it is, because I'm pairing them, and I have these ones that are they're 50%, but I'm marking them like this one I think is het, and we'll see how close I get. But you have to do it pretty routinely, because obviously you could flip a quarter 10 times and guess heads and be like right 8 out of 10 times. Yeah, Swiss definitely. They might, if they sense a predator nearby. It's actually kind of really smart to eat the eggs before the predator does. That's the thing I've seen it too many times where there's nest site disturbance, or they feel like their site's been compromised, and those ones are more likely to eat their eggs. What's your thought on people wanting double clutches from the hogs? Obviously, it takes a lot out of them. They're just naturally double clutching. I'm not really ever doing anything to make my females double clutch. These people that say they're repairing the males and they're getting the double clutch, they're mostly going by false logic and thinking that by introducing the male again, they're getting the second clutch. But they're storing sperm, and like If you've ever seen my dog, you see how many Hognose I have that double clutch? 98% of those are not repaired. It's very hard. You have a very small window to repair. They're ovulating within days after that first clutch is laid. They already have another mature set of follicles coming in. Most of the time. I've had some laid very far apart, and that's, I think, more due to a dietary thing. And then they have enough nutrients and they develop follicles later for a second clutch. And then there's like 60 days apart. But I'd showed on some of my lives, or I think I posted videos too. I'll do it again this year. I do it every year. Where I showed the first clutch is laid, I date it to the second clutch. It's always like 31, 32, 33, 34 days after the first clutch is laid, the second clutch is coming in. I have had some that are way out of left field that are like 60 days, but it's very rare. It's like a small percent, very small percent. I'm going to take a couple more questions and topics and stuff, and we're going to wrap this up. I think I covered like literally everything. I don't think I have to make another video ever again. I mean, I definitely will, but we covered a lot here. When mixing two hogs with multiple genes, does it ever get hard to get the combos you're looking for? Is there a number you try to stay under? It's not a bad question, Anthony. It's actually, I need more clarification. When mixing two hogs with multiple genes, does it ever get hard to get the combos you're looking for? I mean, yeah. I mean, everybody gets, like, everybody always says they have shitty luck. I was like, every time I was like, hey, I got these past sets for sale. With my luck, it won't turn out to be het. I'm like, how has everybody got such bad luck that my 66% pass hets aren't going to be het for anybody? It's like, I've never seen this fucking happen ever in my life, unless somebody sells me some 66ers, and none of them prove out to be. And then I'm like, I think this person was lying. And then I know the kind of person I'm talking to. I'm like, that person is a little neurotic, and they have been doing some odd behavior. They're probably lying. So anyway, yeah, you're going to get people that lie. But just look at the stuff they have. Like, you know, if I have some 66% pass hets, just ask, like, what was the project? It's like, do you think I'm only breeding visuals to hets and, you know, visuals to, like, non-hets? It's like, I'm doing a lot of het to hets. I'm doing all these pass hets. I got tons of pass hets. They're fun. They're good. You know, take a chance in life. People gamble all the time. That's everything in life is a gamble. You know, people get married. Big gamble. Kids, big gamble. Take a job. You go to college. Big gamble. Everything's a gamble. Get in your car and drive. There's drunk people driving out there. Fucking gamble. You know, moving to California. Big gamble. Things are expensive there. You know. So anyway, you should buy pass hets is what I'm saying. Because I work with a lot of them. I'm not saying to buy pass hets for me either. Just do projects with pass hets. It's fine. And if you have a hard time selling them, just like sell them to like a pet store or something. Just don't say it's pass hets. Are you going to post a new gene online after? Yeah, in a couple months. I don't know. I won't be able to come to the reptile talk, so I'm probably going to hold off longer and just be a dick about it. Best ways to identify low expression Arctics. Using your eyes. All right. Do we have any other questions? Well, low expression Arctics, you want to look for let's look at the face of the snake. The outlining on the face pattern, you're looking for higher white. Speckling and freckling in the background, very good. Bellies that are, let's say, the yellow that's appearing out is more of like a butter yellow. But the thing is, sometimes you have red phase incorporated with the Arctic, and the red phase is, it's a polygenic that's increasing red pigmentation, and that can cover up Arctic, characteristics. A aberrant pattern on the nape of the neck, big one. If they have that pattern come out the nape of the neck, it's like tattered or really isolated. That's a good marker. The background being a little lighter, lots of black concentration in between the scales along the saddles, another good marker. If you have red phase in there, again, it's gonna make it tough. I'm dying to see if it can't go. Well, Max, every couple months, after I do it, just contact me directly, and yeah. Anyway, I think that's going to cover up. Yeah, come to the Reptile Talks if you want to talk about it and see it, because I'll be stuck there even after the presentation. So I'll be there like talking about hognose snakes. I don't think I'm going to be doing anything else. I mean, I can't. I'm going to be there. So what a better time than to be at Reptile Talks? I'll be talking to other herpers, people in herpetoculture, keepers. There's going to be some academics there, and then there's going to be some degenerates like me that don't have any academics, but I have a lot of experience, and I'm going to be talking about stuff I've experienced, much like today. But this one's going to be about the new gene. I'm also going to talk about keeping hognose in captivity, and things I've learned from wild studies and applying that to captive specimens. And I'm going to go into more of it there. But reptile talks, I will not have any go-karts there with me. I don't think there's any room to drive it around. It's very expensive to ship. This podcast covered what day is your presentation? I don't know. Let's see. We have Mark Mandick. Oh, sorry. No. Not Mark Mandick. He's a ball python breeder. He's a good ball python breeder. There's a lot of nice orange dream calico stuff. But we have Mark Mandica. I shouldn't say any more of these names. I'm going to fuck them all up. He's an amphibian foundation. Armin Kulian. Herp time. Armin's going to be there. I love Armin. I don't really know him, but I see his stuff. And Phil Leitz, Airs Only. Mike Reddy, Field Tech Photographer. Mark Chen. You got James Lindros. John Dragna's going to be there from Sims Containers. I know him. Phil Goss is going to be there. Justin Munsterman, Legacy Herps. Philippe de Vasjoli. A lot of people know him. He's real big into, he's wrote a lot of books on keeping geckos. You know, Rhacodactylus, leopard geckos. Jeff Galewood, that's me. Bill Stegel, Phoenix Reptiles. Scott Stahl. Oh, he's really good at herp veterinarian. Jordan Russell, I know him. Dayan Ceylani. Chad Brown, he's going to be talking. Socrates, Chris, that guy's got like a very biblical kind of name there. And then James Badman, Red Mountain Conservation. So there you go. I should have just did this, but it reads it backwards. So I don't know. Just go to Reptile Talks. Follow them on Instagram. Check it out. And Hog We Trust. I'm out. See you guys. How long do we have to get a mystery box? Oh, yeah, mystery boxes. I'm still selling mystery boxes until the end of the month. I haven't been promoting those. Fuck, my mystery boxes. All right, I'm going to go over to mystery boxes. So the mystery box, you're going to get a good deal. Anybody that buys the mystery box, you're going to get an animal worth more than what you're paying for by 10, 20, 30, sometimes even 40%. You just give me an idea of what kind of projects you're looking for. You say, hey, I'm looking for snow projects or my type projects. I want a male, I want a female. And then you send me whatever you want. It could be like $500. If you send me $500, you're not going to get anything like $2,000 or $3,000. But if you send me something like $2,000, you're probably going to get like a $2,500, $2,800 animal. And then you get entered into a raffle. And the raffled animal this time is going to be a moonstone. So I'm just doing it just to have fun. That's the thing. I don't say I wouldn't say things get monotonous. But the one reason I go to a lot of these shows and do this stuff is I went to Billings on a whim. Billings isn't going to be a great show. I think everybody knows that. Is there anything in Billings? No. But the one thing is I go to these places just kind of more to have experiences, fun, keep things interesting. The mystery boxes are a lot of fun. I have some extra hognose available right now, so why not? And the raffle is pretty fun. Last time I was only supposed to raffle off one snake. I have actually raffled off two. I like doing the lives and the raffles, get everybody in there talking about hognose and then giving away cool hognose. So it's a lot of fun. If you want to do the mystery box, just message me. Just tell me what projects you're looking for. Send me a certain amount of money, and then you're going to get a hognose worth more than what you paid. So far, nobody's been pissed off with the mystery box. If you are pissed off, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. And, yeah, they're good. See you later. Where do you hit Instagram? Send me a message on Instagram, MORPH Market, Facebook. I'm most active on Instagram, but you can do Facebook Messenger. MORPH Market. If you go to my MORPH Market, I think my phone number is in there. You can text me. A lot of people got my phone number, though, and I don't always check the messages. So, and yeah, I ship to the UK. Yeah, and I could do a mystery box to the UK, but you're going to get it later after you buy it. I guess you could, if you buy it, you can get entered into the raffle. Yeah, before you get the snake. So if you do win the raffle, then I can send you the raffled snake simultaneously with the snake you bought. Yeah, you can be anywhere. You can live in China, Hong Kong. You can live in Japan and do the mystery box. Nobody here is Japanese, though. I know that. There ain't no way. I'm going to go on a limb and say that. But, yeah, I'm doing the mystery boxes till the end of the month. And then we're going to draw a winner on an Instagram Live. And then somebody's going to get a moonstone. And if I get enough mystery boxes, I'll do a second. So mystery boxes are a lot of fun. And then I've been doing this cool thing. It's not cool. It's kind of fun. I don't know. You be the judge. I put a label over the label of the gene, and when you pull it, you reveal what you have. So a little extra. I mean, kind of mystery art. You don't know what the fuck's inside the box, so it's just like a double mystery. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I'm doing tonight. Bye, everybody.